I'm going to make a very strong case that genital mutilation of male children literally creates pedophiles.
There are few people that disgust me more than this pig, but Alan Dershowitz might be one of them. This victim-blaming sociopath, who I believe is also a PDF file, has made a career off of defending
Okay, one of the ones he forgot here was Dr. Nargawala. Dr. Nargawala was an FGM case in the United States of America. She mutilated close to 100 little girls in Michigan, and they prosecuted her under the 1996 anti-FGM law. The Judge Friedman, who was presiding over the case, realized that if they were to successfully prosecute Dr. Nargawala, this would create a constitutional challenge under the equal protection law against the genital mutilation of male children, because there's an equal protection clause. It means you have to protect all citizens equally. You can't protect one citizen at the expense of the other. Little boys deserve the same legal protections as little girls from being sexually assaulted with knives by quacks and psychopaths. So not only did this sick person, this very sick individual, protect Jeffrey Epstein, get him the sweetheart deal, he also got Dr. Nargawala off scot-free. She's still a practicing physician in the United States of America after mutilating, with more than enough evidence, over 100 little girls. If this was prosecuted correctly under a assault and battery case, which it is, she would have been thrown in jail and lost her license and all the other stuff. But they had to make a spectacle about it over the anti-FGM law, and they literally lost the case because of it. Yeah, I didn't know he also got off O.J. Simpson. Man, this is a scoundrel at the highest level.
It is a known fact and proven in the files that he wasn't just Jeffrey Epstein's lawyer. No, the two were extremely close, kept communication going long after the 2008 ridiculous sweetheart deal of a lifetime. Virginia Giuffre openly stated, without hesitation, that this man raped her multiple times. And yes, she walked back that claim because this monster is known for threatening victims, throwing lawsuits at them, stalking them, and thus silencing them.
I guess I'm next, huh? Me and this guy.
I don't think Virginia made a mistake when she stated that. Not one bit. It's still in the Epstein doc on Netflix. You can hear her say it. And it is also my opinion that Alan unalived his first wife, Sue Barlock. They married in 1959. He was 20, she was 18. It has been reported by many sources that the reason for their divorce in 1976 was because he put her in the hospital. That's how violent and brutal what he did to her was. He didn't stop there. He then took her two sons away. High-powered attorney, lots of money, lots of connections. Are we shocked? And then Sue lost her life from apparently drowning herself in the East River. Now, side note, the East River was notorious for hiding the bodies that the mafia needed to get rid of. I do not believe Sue Barlock took her own life. And Alan Dershowitz, you're a piece of shit.
Now, this in no way justifies people becoming child abusers and abusing children in the future. I'm just explaining to you how we are creating these sickos by damaging their brains as children. And it's no surprise, or I guess it's very well known that these areas of the world tend to have a lot of PDF files. For instance, the Bachibazi boys of Afghanistan, marrying young children. Aisha was 9 when the marriage was consummated. So these genital mutilation cultures are damaging their children, and this is responsible for a huge amount of violence, trauma, and future issues that are occurring in our society today that we see every day, with bombs being exploded over apartment buildings with little children inside of it. So let's look at what childhood trauma does to the brain. So your brain is not finished when you're born. It is built through experience. Okay, the first year of a life, actually the first 3 years of life are called the critical period of brain development. Any trauma or adverse childhood experiences during this time period has been shown to literally alter the brain development of the victim. So we are literally torturing children at the worst time of their lives, and then we say, oh, it's so much better because he won't have to go through the pain as an adult. So instead of putting an adult through this pain. We force it on a child when their brain is developing, which is literally what creates the damage. Okay, so neural pathways form based off of what you go through. Emotional systems wire based on what you feel. Control systems develop based off of what you learn. So the experience of the early period of our child's lives is the most important period of their lives. This will set up the rest of their lives. In fact, childhood trauma is probably the number one cause of human mental dysfunction in the world, guaranteed. Any areas of the world where children are suffering extreme trauma, they will have repercussions in later years. Trauma enters early life. When trauma happens early, your brain shifts into survival mode. Stress hormones increase, threat detection becomes dominant, development changes. The brain adapts to survive, not to regulate normally. This is a permanent change. This happens through epigenetics, where the brain will activate areas of the genes that increase the threat, the threat detection of the organism, that increase its fight or flight system. The brain adapts to survive, not to regulate normally. That's very important. This is not normal regulation. Your prefrontal cortex is the major control system. If you put your hand on your forehead, that's your frontal cortex of your brain. It's the main thinking area. It's where your conscious awareness happens. During trauma and the fight or flight system, the brain doesn't need to do complex equations or think through logical things. It needs to get the heck out of Dodge. So it needs to focus on the limbic system. So children who go through early life trauma, their body's ability to shut down the frontal lobe has been enhanced. So they would literally shut down the thinking part faster and more complete than the average person who hasn't been affected by childhood trauma. So it regulates impulse, it makes decisions, and it stops actions. Childhood trauma is associated with reduced development in this region. Neuroimaging studies in pedophilia report reduced gray matter and altered activity in the same control systems. Emotion and arousal, the amygdala. Okay, the amygdala is a central part of the limbic system. So this system controls fear and processes emotional importance, and it processes arousal. Childhood trauma increases reactivity here. Studies in pedophilia show altered responses in the same system when processing stimuli. So the amygdala is the alert system. In trauma-damaged children, the amygdala has been shown to be morphologically and structurally larger. It grows larger. These are morphological changes that have been proven with brain imaging studies and research. Memory and conditioning, the hippocampus. This is where experiences are stored and linked. Memory is not just recall, it is association. Childhood trauma reduces volume and alters function. The system links experience with emotion and psychological response. This is from an interesting study done by Catherine Humphreys of Vanderbilt University. Stress and trauma in early years linked to reduced hippocampal volume in adolescence. These findings tell us that there may be a sensitive period in which stress is more likely to affect the development of the hippocampus, which is connected to learning, memory, and mood, said lead author Catherine L. Humphreys, assistant professor of psychology at Vanderbilt. Given that the hippocampus undergoes rapid changes in the first year of life, the effects of stressful experiences during this period, even those the child doesn't remember, may be particularly important in understanding the development of this region of the brain. Sexual regulation through the hypothalamus. This system regulates hormones and sexual behavior. It connects biological drive to brain signaling. Differences in this region have been reported in neuroimaging studies of pedophilia and also have been shown to be altered morphologically in studies of adverse childhood experiences. Brain connections, white matter. Your brain works through connections. Emotion connects to a control. Arousal connects to decision making. Childhood trauma reduces the integrity of these connections. Studies in pedophilia report disrupted connectivity between the same systems. So you're going to tell me all these areas of the brain that are damaged with circumcision are also altered strangely in pedophiles, and these are just random connections, and the fact that circumcising cultures, baby mutilating or child mutilating cultures, tend to have a tremendous amount of pedophilia. I'm telling you, there's no question there's a link. How the brain learns. Your brain learns through association. Emotion plus experiences equal writing. Arousal plus experience equals pattern. During development, these patterns become embedded. The system that we're talking about, the overall system, the limbic system, there's a concept called limbic imprinting. So if you take a baby elephant and you tie it to a stake, it will fight all day long to break itself away. But when it realizes it can, eventually, it stops fighting. Then when it becomes an adult, even though it could easily rip the stake right out of the ground, it never tries. Same thing for horses. Men will tie horses around a pole when they're younger, and when they're older, they can just drape the thing over that. They don't really have to tie it anymore because the horse has been conditioned. And so limbic imprinting affects our memory and affects us in our development. So the core idea is that before memory, the brain still records experiences, and these impressions stay with us for the rest of our lives. Okay, so if our first impressions are painful, frightening, or lonely, these impressions will imprint and as our valid experience of love. Studies report higher rates of childhood abuse among individuals who later engage in sexual offending. Neuroimaging studies identify differences in prefrontal cortex, the amygdala, the hippocampus, the hypothalamus, and white matter connectivity. So, in conclusion, when you damage children, especially their sexual organ, and you develop and you connect pain to that sexual organ, and you create morphological structural changes in areas of the brain that deal with memory, mood, personality, fight or flight reactivity, the amygdala, you're altering the amygdala. Go check this out when you get done with this. Google the amygdala hijack. The amygdala when the amygdala hijack occurs, it literally shuts down the frontal lobe, like we talked about, shutting down that thinking brain. When amygdala hijack occurs, this is when you have somebody that, loses their mind, like the neighbor, who's never done anything bad, just one day just beats his wife, and everybody's like, I can't believe it. He was such a nice guy. How could he do such a horrible thing? And nobody can understand why. That's amygdala hijack. It's where you lose control of yourself. And so we are damaging children's brain development. And to think this doesn't have influence on their behaviors later in life, the personality that they have, the stress response, their likelihood of creating crimes, and their likelihood of being a sexual offender are vastly and greatly increased. So all of you people who are crying about Epstein and all these other people, why don't we start by not creating these people?